On the night of December 24, 1945, the Sodder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia burned to the ground. Investigators found no bones, no teeth, no biological material belonging to any of the 5 missing children. George and Jenny Sodder had 10 children. After the fire, they had 5. Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty were declared dead by the initial investigation. The declaration rested on one assumption, that the fire had consumed them entirely. That assumption would not survive scrutiny. The fire began sometime after midnight. George Sodder woke to smoke and managed to lead 5 of his children out through a window. He attempted to re-enter the house twice. The ladder he kept mounted to the side of the building was gone from its position. His 2 trucks, which he had tried to use to reach upper windows, would not start. Both had been operational the previous afternoon. By the time the Fayetteville Fire Department arrived, the structure had already collapsed. The fire chief declared the deaths accidental. The cause was listed as faulty wiring. What the investigation did not fully account for was the phone line. A telephone operator later reported that the Sodder line had been severed, not from within the house, but from outside at the pole. This was confirmed. The line had been cut before the fire started. The family's fuse box was also found in a condition consistent with external tampering. These 2 details were logged and then, for the purposes of the official conclusion, set aside. Forensic context matters here. A residential structure fire of the duration and temperature recorded that night would not, under standard conditions, eliminate human bone entirely. Bone survives fire. Children's teeth survive fire. Investigators working decades later, reviewing the case with modern forensic knowledge, noted that even in cremation furnaces, which burn hotter and longer than a house fire, fragments remain. The Sodder site was excavated. What was recovered from the ash was minimal and did not include anything positively identified as human remains from any of the 5 children. The investigation stalled quickly. There was no formal inquiry into the cut phone line. No inquest examined the tampered fuse box. The fire chief's ruling stood, and the case moved toward closure in the way that small jurisdiction cases often do, not through resolution, but through administrative finality. A death certificate requires a declaration. The declaration was made. The file was, for official purposes, complete. George Sodder did not accept it. He spent his own money to hire private investigators. Several reported promising leads and then disappeared from the case without explanation. One investigator told the family that local officials had warned him away from the inquiry. Whether that account was accurate is difficult to establish. What is established is that none of the investigators George hired produced a verifiable outcome. In the years that followed, the Sodder family received a number of communications that were never satisfactorily explained. Witnesses in the area reported seeing children matching the descriptions of the missing Sodder children in a vehicle leaving the scene the night of the fire. One woman reported seeing children at a motel some distance from Fayetteville the following morning. These accounts were not formally investigated. They exist now as statements made, noted, and left to stand unverified beside the official record. George Sodder erected a billboard on Route 19 near Fayetteville. It bore photographs of the 5 children, a physical description of each, and an offer of $5,000 for information. The billboard stood through winter and summer, through years that became a decade, and then 2 decades. Drivers passing through the area would have seen it. The images would have aged on the board, while the children, wherever they were, would have aged too. George Sodder died in 1969. The billboard stood until the family chose to take it down. Then, in 1967, something arrived in the mail. Jenny Sodder received an envelope bearing a Southern postmark. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed a young man. Jenny Sodder believed, with a certainty she maintained for the rest of her life, that the young man in the photograph was her son Louis. He would have been in his mid-30s by then. The photograph showed someone of approximately that age. Nothing on the envelope identified the sender. Nothing inside the envelope offered explanation. The image arrived, and then the correspondence stopped. No authority formally investigated the photograph. It was examined by people close to the family. It was compared against images of Louis Sodder taken before the fire. The resemblance, by every account from those who saw both sets of images, was notable. That is the extent of what can be said with certainty. The photograph exists. The sender does not. There is one additional detail that belongs in the record. In the period before the fire, George Sodder had been involved in a public dispute with a local man over his political opinions regarding Italy. George had emigrated from Italy and was vocal in his views about Mussolini. The man, during an argument, reportedly told George that his house would be burned and his children taken. This account comes from the family. Its weight depends on how seriously you are willing to take a threat made before a fire that consumed nothing it should have consumed and left behind nothing it should have left behind. The case has never been officially reopened. The death certificates remain on file in West Virginia. The children are listed as deceased. The photograph Jenny Sodder received in 1967 has no identified origin. The envelope was postmarked in the South. The young man in it looked, to a mother who had spent 22 years with her children's faces on a roadside billboard, like her son. The question is not whether the fire was set. The question is this: if 5 children were taken from that house on Christmas Eve and placed somewhere else, who decided that Jenny Sodder should receive one photograph and then nothing more?